Welcome back to the Morgan Thomas Show. Thank you for hanging on during the break. This is segment number 2, Morgan Thomas Show with Big Al, Alan Adams. Al, let's get into segment number 2, one of our popular segments here, because right now I believe we're both above 60% picks against the spread.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't know how we do it, we basically do all the ACC games and the top 25 versus top 25 games. And so we'll start you off with ACC games here. The first game out of the gate is Pittsburgh at Syracuse. Now for me, Al, these ACC games are getting a lot more complicated for me because especially, well, this one is on the Atlantic side. I feel like the Atlantic's a little bit easier to pick, but the Coastal Division, I'm basically picking one out of the hat. But let's start off with Pittsburgh at Syracuse. At the time I wrote this down, I have Pittsburgh -3. We know it could change, but I got Pittsburgh -3. What's your thoughts on the game?
As far as Pittsburgh and Syracuse goes, I want to pick the Orange because in this crazy ACC, they're bound to win one they shouldn't. But I just can't. Pittsburgh's been a little up and down. Had the big win at Duke last week, so I'm looking for him to get another. I'm going to take Pittsburgh minus the 3 points against Syracuse.
And just to tell you our record right now, and this record includes all top 25, not top 25 versus top 25, but all top 25 games that have been played each week, and then all ACC games. Allen's at 110-66, and I'm at 106-70. And our friend over at SB Nation, Jason Priester, really good guy over at clemsonjunkies.com as well, 113-63. He's leading the way right now, so good job there, Jason. For me, Pittsburgh, when you look at it, they're great at stopping the run, and I think really that's all you really need to do to beat Syracuse. Hold Mo Neal in check, and that's what Clemson did, and that's what Maryland did, and that's what I think Pittsburgh's going to do. Syracuse has a horrible defense, giving up 425 yards per game. And I think that I really feel like that Pittsburgh is going to be able to go to the Carrier Dome and win. It's a toss-up, really. -3, I think they will go in and win this one, so I've got Pittsburgh as well. Next game up on the ACC slate is NC State at Boston College. NC State -3 as of writing this. What you got on that game?
I'm going to go with BC to take the W here and continue the solid streak of covering the spread. When I pick for them, I like to pick BC against the spread. It seems to work out pretty well for me. I'm going to do that as well. I'm going to take Boston College plus 3 points.
Bad pick. They just lost their quarterback, Boston College. So really, they got A.J. Dillon, obviously really great. But NC State is 5th in the country at rushing yards per game, 66.7 yards, better than Clemson. Now, obviously, they haven't played the same type of teams, but still better than Clemson by almost 40 yards. So NC State's got a pretty stout rushing defense there, plus or -3, -2.5, -1, whatever it'll be. I believe that NC State will beat them by at least a touchdown. Boston College, whenever I've picked them, they've hurt me. I'm not picking them this weekend, so give me NC State to stop the run and win the game. Next one up is Georgia Tech at Miami, kind of one that scares me a little bit. Miami, as of watching this, I think is -18 or giving 18, so it's at home. What you got for this one?
But I'm looking for the Miami Hurricanes to kind of keep their win streak going here and get a big win at home against Georgia Tech, obviously a team that's been struggling for quite a while now. So I'm going to take Miami -18.
Yeah, I think that Miami is coming off a big win against Virginia, of all teams that I don't think anybody in our group picked Virginia to lose that game, 17-9. Perry, their quarterback, is kind of doing pretty well, replacing Jaron Williams after the injury there. But Miami's still trying to figure out what they're doing. Georgia Tech is, man, if Miami's trying to figure out what they're doing, Georgia Tech is like times 1,000 trying to figure out what they're doing. Everybody that's an underclassman for Georgia Tech was brought in for a completely different scheme and coach. And that's just a disaster right now. They can't figure out what they're doing. But I'll tell you, some games, like I think UNC, they scored almost 3 touchdowns or around two and 2.5 or something like that. So, or 22 points, I believe. So Georgia Tech knows how to score in some games, and then they turn around against Temple, has a pretty decent defense, and can only get 2 points. That's why I say Miami's going to win this one, because they have a pretty decent defense as well. Mm-hmm. So even though I don't trust Miami at all, I don't think Georgia Tech's going to win another game in 2019. If you look at their schedule, they've got pretty much all, I would say, mid to top level coastal teams. And I don't see that. And then they got Georgia at the end of the year, which we know anybody can beat them. But I don't see Georgia Tech winning any games this year for sure. So I'm going with Miami minus 18. Next game is North Carolina at Virginia Tech. This one, I think, is a hard one to pick. Well, this one and the next one is hard too. But North Carolina at Virginia Tech, UNC minus 3. But the ESPN's Football Power Index has the Tar Heels at a 69% winner. I don't know if I see that.
Yeah, I have no reason to pick Virginia Tech in this game. I picked against Virginia Tech all year, and I've loved it because it's worked out for the most part. I think it didn't when they played Miami, something like that. But Virginia Tech has just been really bad, worse than people even expected them to be for sure. I bet against them all year, but I'm taking the hometown Hokies to win this game. Give me Virginia Tech plus the 3 against UNC. I don't know why, but I think it's going to work out for me.
I know why, because you're cheating off of my paper right now. I feel like that they're pretty evenly matched teams. When I picked the Tar Heels, they lost against Appalachian State and Wake Forest. And so I'm not picking the Tar Heels anymore. I'm going to pick Virginia Tech. I feel like being a 3-point underdog at home is a mistake. I think that they're pretty evenly matched teams as far as offense and defense, but as I said before, with other games that I've picked, I like the better rushing defense, and Virginia Tech has a better rushing defense. We know that North Carolina needs to get the rush going in order to open up things for Howell, and I think that Virginia Tech stops that. And so I'm going with Virginia Tech with the points at home on that one. This one, another one I told you was kind of hard for me. Duke at Virginia. Virginia minus 3.5 as of I believe Tuesday night. What you got?
Cavaliers, like I said, they shocked me when they lost to Miami. They did not shock Vegas. Vegas pegged that one, and it just irritates me because, again, we talked about no football reason for that to be the case, and yet somehow Vegas knows. All right, doesn't matter what you think you know, Vegas knows. So give me the Cavaliers to recover after a big home loss to the Canes. I'm going to take UVA minus 3.5.
You know, I picked Virginia against Notre Dame, and they let me down. I picked Virginia against Miami, and they let me down. But I think they're going to rebound here. They have a better rushing defense, which you know that's what I like to look for.
That's right.
They only allow 90 yards per game, and they're going to have home field advantage. I think Duke is a really good team, but has struggled lately. And I think they're both 4-2 right now. But and I think both the quarterbacks are pretty comparable. This game is going to be one of those games fighting for that top spot over in the Coastal Division. I think it's going to be really, really competitive. But give me Virginia at home minus the 3.5 for me. Next up, Florida State, a team that Clemson just faced and blew out at Wake Forest. So they got to travel. As of me writing this, I've got Wake at minus 2.5. What you got?
Look, I haven't bought into the Demon Deacons all year. Obviously, people wanted to talk them up about being undefeated and possibly being undefeated when they, played Clemson near the end of the year. They still only have one loss coming in this game. Obviously a heartbreaker against Louisville last week. That was an offensive shootout. And honestly, it was a bit of a controversial call on the onside kick at the end of the game. I think the call stood as, possession went to Louisville at the end of that game, and had they been called the other way, it probably would have been flipped to Wake, and Wake would have gone and immediately scored. They were scoring nonstop on each other last game, but I just haven't kind of bought into what they've got going. Their offense has been pretty good. Not sold on their defense. Obviously, they gave up 62 to Louisville, but give me the Seminoles as the loss is going to beat Wake Forest twice. So give me the Seminoles plus 2.5.
I think that Wake Forest can score at will. I know that they didn't beat Louisville. But I know that Florida State can't score at will. I think Wake Forest, again, has the better defense when you compare the two. And I did a little bit of cheating and looked at OddsShark, and OddsShark's picking Wake, so I'm picking Wake. So that's how I went with that one on that one. So, all right, so that's it for our ACC game. On to our top 25 versus top 25 matchups. Not any Southern matchups we have right now. A lot of up north and over on the West Coast. So teams we're not so familiar with unless you stay up late for Pac-12 at night. But number 12, Oregon, at number 25, Washington. Two powerhouse quarterbacks there, just slinging the ball all over the field. Oregon, as of this, is minus 3. Who do you got?
Look, last week I called Washington overrated, and when we talked about the 5 things that we learned, that was a good segment. If you want to go back and check out that video, I continue to believe that. But the Ducks haven't been beating people quite like I expected them to entering the year. I talked about them as a possible playoff team last week as well, and that continues to be true. However, I'm just riding on a hunch with this one. I'm going to take the Huskies with the home atmosphere to cover against the Oregon Ducks here. They may not sneak out the win, but I'm going to take Washington plus the 3.
Well, I don't know if I can take Washington, man. It is very tempting because of how good Easton is doing right now, but I'm going with the better defense, and the better defense on passing and rushing is Oregon. So they have two good offenses. Probably going to be a lot of points, but overall, I think Oregon is a better defense, and defense will eventually win. Oregon's only allowing 8.7 points per game, which it's ridiculous. So I'm saying defense wins this one. Give me Oregon minus the 3. Next up, number 17, Arizona State at number 13, Utah. Utah is giving 2 touchdowns, minus 14.
Okay, so look, the Sun Devils have overachieved this year for the most part. They look like a really solid team. I love what Utah brings to the table. I've always kind of been a fan of Utah and watched them, kind of as they bust up the real power teams. I like to see that. They've done a really good job of that for several years now. But I'm actually going to take Arizona State to cover here. They've looked really good on offense. I like what they bring to the table, so I'm going to take the Sun Devils to cover plus 14.
Number 16, Michigan at number 7, Penn State. Penn State minus 9. And I think, Alan, if you've watched this show at all, you already know who I'm picking.
Look, the Nittany Lions this year have proven to be a formidable team. They play well at home. The Wolverines talk ends this week, as the night crowd propels Penn State to a big win. Give me Penn State minus the 9. I hope they blow them out by 40.
I'm never picking Michigan this year. I'm not picking them at all this year. And so give me Penn State. That's what I mean by, if you watch this show, I'm not picking Michigan at all. So that was it for our top 25 versus top 25. Alan, I threw in a bonus. I don't know if you saw my notes, but I threw in a little bonus for you. All right. I know Marty's going to enjoy this one, our good friend Marty. Number 9, Florida at South Carolina. So the Gators, who just come off, I thought that LSU Florida game was pretty doggone good. It was an exciting game. A lot of people beating up the defenses. I think they just had two really good offensive line play during that game. I think their defenses are solid. I don't think it was because their defenses are bad, but both quarterbacks seem to have pretty good time in the pocket to make decisions. And, man, it made out for a really fun and exciting game. LSU just barely beat the spread by 1 freaking point, Al. I almost had them there. Almost had another win on the board against you. I think you picked LSU and I picked Florida. So I almost had it. And so I wanted to throw this one in. It looks like, let me look at this again. I'm rubbing my eyes here because I want to make sure I'm right with this. But it looks like that the spread on Monday it was off, but now it's minus 5.5 as of Tuesday on our Yahoo Pick'em here. So I've got minus 5.5. Florida versus South Carolina. What you got on that?
Well, I think I saw the opening line at something like 6.5. It gone down to 5.5. That makes me think that the 2 defensive ends, they were kind of questionable for Florida, that they may not be playing if the line's going down. I'm not really sure. If that's the case, I mean, that's a whole different story. I think Florida can rush the passer. We know that they have a good defense, and they can stop the run as well. Look, I know it didn't look like it against LSU, but LSU it was a really good offensive team. Florida did well also. Trask was really hitting guys with pinpoint accuracy because the LSU defensive backs were all over him, but they were making some good plays. He was making some great throws. So I think they'll have the offense and the defense to match South Carolina. I really think they should win this game. It worries me a little bit if those defensive ends are out, but I'm assuming they have another couple decent players that can just kind of come in and take their place. So I'm going to take Florida minus the 5.5.
Well, I think Florida does have the better defense, and if you watched that game against Georgia, Ryan Helinski was limping around and still in the game and could barely move his knee. Then he iced it, and when they actually ended up winning, he tried to jump up, and it was like he was on a peg leg. His knee was so locked up. Now, Will Muschamp is saying that knee injury, nothing serious, it's just a sprain. But if anything, that Florida defense is going to be hungry to get after him and test that knee out, not to injure him maliciously, but just to test his ability to move around in the pocket and try to get to him for a sack. I think that it's more than nothing serious. I think it's a big deal. He was out there. It looked pretty painful just to watch. South Carolina's coming off a big win. Florida coming off of a tough loss. But Florida's doing way better than we thought they would. And Trask can throw the ball all over the place. Mm-hmm. South Carolina versus Alabama. Alabama was able to throw all over them as well. Didn't even have to run the ball to win that game big. I think that Florida can do the same thing. Florida's kind of got an average running game, just kind of like Alabama does, which is weird to say. But they definitely have a really good passing game, and Trask can throw it all over the field. So I'm going to go with Florida on that game as well. So that's just a little bonus there for you. Coming up after the break, we're going to give you our preview and prediction for the game where Clemson travels to Louisville to play the Cardinals. We'll be back right after this.